Mollie here. Today we are talking about Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 7, Erigah. Here's the recap. The episode begins with Moll and L'ak getting picked up by the Federation because they were dumb enough to put out a distress call in the hopes that other couriers would get to them first. Of course, the Federation got there first, which was super convenient for the writers. On Discovery, Commander Non, also known as a Yum Yum, is telling Michael Burnham about Admiral Vance the Mummy Guy's plan to bring Moll and L'ak aboard Discovery. She hands Michael Burnham Dr. Velek's diary. Now they can translate the pieces they don't have and find out more about the progenitor's tech. Walking down the corridor, Michael Burnham and Yum Yum come to the sickbay where Moll and L'ak are going to be kept. Book is waiting outside. Yum Yum tells Book he's not getting in to see Moll, and the last time Yum Yum saw Book, he had fired photon torpedoes on Discovery and set off an isolytic weapon. Apparently, she's having a hard time letting go of that. I can't imagine why. Book tells her he's been working to make things right ever since. Yum Yum tells him that doesn't mean you're not a security risk. Michael Burnham steps in and tells Book if they need his help, she'll find him. Book leaves, and Michael Burnham tells Yum Yum that Book is a good man, and she trusts him. Yum Yum tells Michael Burnham she knows what Book means to Michael Burnham, and that's why she went easy on him, and Michael Burnham and Yum Yum smile at each other. Yum Yum hands the diary to one of the security people at the door, and she and Michael Burnham enter the sickbay. Dr. Culber tells them L'ak is in bad shape, and it's a miracle he's still alive. He will be beamed directly into a biobed. Because Moll threw a tantrum when security tried to separate her from L'ak, Discovery has modified the containment field in order to hold L'ak and Moll together. Culber says this is being done because keeping them apart would be too much stress on his system. The reality is that keeping them together is necessary for the rest of the stupidity that's going to happen later in this episode, but I'm getting ahead of this so-called story. Moll and L'ak and some security are beamed over. Michael Burnham tells Moll that they're going to take care of L'ak, and Moll retorts, "You did this to him!" Yum Yum seems to admire Moll's ferocity. Dr. Culber tells Michael Burnham that some vital organ must have been hit because L'ak is fading. They don't know enough about Breen physiology to be able to do much more than ease L'ak's pain. But Dr. Culber did some research in the Dominion War records and learned that the Breen are capable of somatic cell regeneration in extreme cold, and they've located a captured Breen refrigeration unit in an old Fed HQ storage manifest. And they're going to use it to convert a biobed into a low-temperature ICU unit. The Discovery arrives at Fed headquarters, but when they try to dock, they're instructed to hold. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy has a classified message for Michael Burnham, so she heads to her ready room. And she actually walks there. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy beams directly into the ready room and tells Michael Burnham the refrigeration unit will be beamed to the Discovery, and Moll and L'ak will remain in Michael Burnham's custody. Once the refrigeration unit is on board, they are to jump immediately as far away as possible. A Breen dreadnought is on its way, and they are demanding that the Federation hand over the two fugitives. The Federation president is away at a diplomatic summit, so for her protection, she's going to stay there. Instead, the president of Navarre, Saru's girlfriend, will be handling negotiations with the Breen. Michael Burnham asks Admiral Vance Mummy Guy, how did the Breen even know we were holding them? And Admiral Vance Mummy Guy tells her that the Breen must be monitoring their communications. But we all know the real reason is sloppy writing needs the Breen to come, and they couldn't be bothered to come up with something better. The Federation can't hand over Moll and L'ak because they can't have Moll and L'ak telling the Breen about the progenitor's tech. So the Discovery is supposed to jump away with Moll and L'ak. Michael Burnham asks Admiral Vance Mummy Guy, and then what? You just deny the Federation has them? Admiral Vance Mummy Guy responds with, by all means, Captain, speak freely. And Michael Burnham actually says, apologies, Admiral. But then the Admiral actually addresses her question by telling her that they know the Breen are too smart for games. But having Moll and L'ak elsewhere will eliminate the immediate risk. Michael Burnham points out that they can't keep moving indefinitely, and the Breen will cause a lot of destruction as they follow Discovery to get to Moll and L'ak. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy asks Michael Burnham if she has a better idea, an alternate proposal. And of course she does. Discovery stays, and they force the Breen to deal with them, now, and find a solution, instead of putting off the inevitable and having a confrontation later. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy tells Michael Burnham Discovery stays, and Moll and L'ak will remain on board, just in case. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy, Michael Burnham, and Commander Raynor meet with the President of Navarre. Apparently, there is no one else of importance at Federation headquarters, so we're stuck with these boobs to deal with the Breen. President Saru's girlfriend gives us an exposition dump to catch up the audience on the background of the Breen. There has been no official contact with the Breen since before the burn, but they do know that the Breen have been experiencing unrest since the death of their emperor. 6 Primarchs are currently at war for control of the Imperium. Michael Burnham asks if they know who is coming, and Raynor says it doesn't matter because all Breen are the same. President Saru's girlfriend points out that this faction seeks power, and there must be something the Federation can offer them to negate the Erigah. Raynor points out an Erigah is a blood bounty, and if the Breen need to start a war to fulfill it, they will. Then Raynor says, don't forget what happened last time the Breen entered Federation space. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy interrupts and says Starfleet was caught flat-footed. That's not going to happen this time. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy has called back some ships as a deterrent, and they'll mount a defense if need be. They just need to keep things calm until backup arrives. Michael Burnham says, something doesn't add up here, which is something we're all saying, let's face it. They don't need to come into Federation territory to make this demand. She believes there's another reason why the Breen want Moll and L'ak. They start speculating about the royal succession, and Raynor blurts out that it doesn't matter. He thinks they should rig some to their hull and pretend to be armed to the gills, and maybe the Breen will think twice. And President Saru's girlfriend interrupts and says, that might incite them to attack. Raynor says, so what? We should just stick our necks out on the chopping block? Michael Burnham tells him, we're all on the same team. And Raynor asks, am I the only one familiar with the Romulan saying, never turn your back on a Breen? President Saru's girlfriend tells Raynor to stop being a xenophobe. Raynor replies, to the Breen, genocide is a necessity. Their version of the Prime Directive. That's when Michael Burnham says, Commander, wait for me outside. Raynor doesn't like it, but he goes. Michael Burnham tells President Saru's girlfriend that they need to get information out of Moll and L'ak, and Michael Burnham thinks she can get it out of them. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy tells her to do it. Then he tells Michael Burnham to make sure and keep her number 1 in line. They can't afford any missteps when the Breen get there. Out in the hallway, Raynor starts talking as soon as he sees Michael Burnham coming. He tells her if Vance thinks a defensive position is anything short of an invitation to be decimated, and Michael Burnham cuts him off. Admiral Vance Mummy Guy is doing his best with what he has, and he's as concerned as Michael Burnham about Raynor's ability to handle this. Raynor tells Michael Burnham that she and Admiral Vance Mummy Guy don't understand what they're up against. And Michael Burnham replies, but I suspect you do, and that it seems personal. If he has valuable intel, he needs to share it. And Raynor says he's already said what he needs to say, and he apologizes for his tone. It's obvious he knows something, and the writers are going to wait for a big reveal rather than having a grown man who's been in Starfleet a long time just share what he knows. They're under yellow alert. For some reason, Tilly is leaving Discovery because her students might need her. Stamets catches up with Tilly in the corridor and tells her the mission of finding the progenitor's tech is their top priority. So Tilly stays. Why they don't have top Federation scientists working on this rather than the crew of the Discovery, I don't know, but that's what was written. Stamets is literally holding up the clue in the corridor, telling Tilly, this clue is the most important thing in the Federation right now. And he's just waving it around. You'd think that thing would be under lock and key and guarded, since the future of the Federation depends on it. But whatever. We'll just wave it around in the hallway. Dr. Culber's cold bed is helping L'ak, and he's improving. Michael Burnham tells Moll and L'ak that the Breen are on their way. Michael Burnham asks if Moll and L'ak know of anything the Breen would accept as payment to buy their way out of the Erigah. L'ak tells her if there was, he and Moll would have paid it. Michael Burnham is confused. She can't figure out why the Breen would send a dreadnought into Federation space all the way to Federation headquarters for their Erigah. She asks them again why this Primarch wants them so badly. Moll and L'ak say nothing. Moll tells Michael Burnham to let them go, and Michael Burnham points out that L'ak is in no condition to leave. L'ak tells her some things are worse than death. Michael Burnham asks him, what's worse than death? Moll gets snarky, and Michael Burnham finally figures out that the Primarch doesn't want L'ak dead. She She realizes L'ak is the royal bloodline, and the Primarch needs L'ak to remain in power. This would mean L'ak being back under the Primarch's thumb, and for someone who has fought for his freedom, that would be worse than death. L'ak admits he's a direct descendant of the Emperor. He's the scion of the Breen Empire, and it makes him sick to even say it. He asks Michael Burnham to do him a favor and spit in his uncle's face. The Breen arrive in a dreadnought that looks like something straight out of anime. Star Blazers in particular, if you're familiar with that franchise. Michael Burnham tells President Saru's girlfriend that the Breen ship is the same one from the time bug cycle to the future, where the Federation was destroyed. She also tells her that without L'ak, this Primarch has no claim to the throne. A giant holographic Breen helmet appears in the center of the atrium. He's Primarch Rune, and he demands the fugitives be turned over. Blah blah blah, threats, whatever. In what appears to be another hallway conversation, Michael Burnham tells Raynor that they're running out of time, and asks him what he knows about Breen leadership. Michael Burnham admits she did some digging into Raynor's past, and found out, tragic backstory. Kelleron was used as a Breen outpost. He tells her it was a long time ago, and not something he likes talking about. Primarch Tahal ran his planet, using it as a munitions resupply hub, which is ironic, or done on purpose as a nod to the role the actor played in Battlestar Galactica. Tahal wrecked his planet and killed a bunch of people. Raynor was the only one of his family to survive. Michael Burnham says she's sorry for what Raynor went through, and thanks him for talking. Michael Burnham comes up with a plan to convince Primarch Rune that they've got a possible deal with Primarch Tahal to turn over L'ak to her. Rune doesn't believe them, but Raynor rattles off things he knows about Tahal and convinces Rune that the deal is legit. Rune is ready to make a deal so he can leave with L'ak. President Saru's girlfriend tells him the Federation is willing to reject Tahal's offer if Rune leaves in peace and allows Moll and L'ak to stay with the Federation. L'ak will be safely ensconced with the Federation while Rune settles his dispute with Tahal. Rune tells them that if anything bad happens to L'ak, that war will be inevitable. Unfortunately, the plot point requiring the mistake of having Moll and L'ak locked up together has borne its fruit. In an attempt to escape, L'ak gave himself an overdose of stimulant. Of course, maybe if he was restrained, he wouldn't have been able to sabotage his bed, or maybe if they'd been supervised, that wouldn't have happened, or had Moll been locked up elsewhere, they wouldn't have been able to come up with a plan, but stupid crap writers will write stupid crap, so that's why we have conveniently stupid characters, so that we can have conveniently stupid plot points. L'ak overdoses, medical emergency ensues, the shield around Moll and L'ak comes down, Moll takes out a bunch of security people, including Yum Yum, Culber fights better than the security officers, and Moll is on her way to steal a shuttle when Book catches up with her and tells her that L'ak misjudged the dose, and he may not survive. Moll believes Book and heads to L'ak's bedside. Michael Burnham tells the Breen to send a medic, and the Primarch will also be coming. Like I predicted in our review of the Mirror episode, L'ak is going to die, and Moll will go after the progenitor's tech in order to try to bring him back from the dead. And if this wasn't Star Trek Discovery, this could have been a moving scene, but Moll being a cold-blooded killer kind of takes the sympathy right out of the viewer. Would it kill these writers to write a likable female character? Anyway, Moll keeps repeating, "This isn't how our story ends," and L'ak dies. The Breen are pissed and blame the Federation for L'ak's death. They tell Michael Burnham to prepare for battle. Raynor tells President Saru's girlfriend that the Federation should strike the Breen first. Somehow he manages to restrain himself and not mutiny when he's told no. Then the 4 Starfleet backup ships finally show up. Michael Burnham and Dr. Culber are still trying to convince the Primarch this was an escape attempt gone wrong. But the Primarch won't have it. Why he's still there, I don't know. Moll then interrupts the arguing. This is where I wish they had written her a less psychopathic character. She tells the Primarch it's true, that this was an escape attempt that went sideways. L'ak did it so she and L'ak could be free. The Primarch tells her that her words are not enough, and Moll says, "You think a war to avenge him will unite the Breen behind you." And the Primarch tells her that if he cannot use the Scion in life, he will use him in death. Moll tells Rune where L'ak goes, she goes, even in death, and reveals that she and L'ak were married. This obligates Rune to take her with him. He tells her she will never be welcome, And that's when she tells him about the progenitor's tech, and she can get it for him if he takes her with him. Rune tells Michael Burnham that in order to avoid war, he's taking Moll and gives them 5 minutes to transport her to his ship. Michael Burnham tells President Saru's girlfriend that Moll has a plan, and Moll is now seeking the progenitor's tech in order to resurrect L'ak, and by giving the Breen the progenitor's tech, Moll believes she and L'ak will also be free of the Erigah. Book points out that Rune will kill Moll the second he gets the tech, and Yum Yum says maybe she has a plan for that too. Since the Federation has the next clue and Moll doesn't, President Saru's girlfriend decides to let the Breen have Moll, because it's either that or they get their ass kicked by a superior force. Book tells Michael Burnham this is very wrong and walks out. The Breen leave and take Moll with them. Meanwhile, Stamets, Tilly, and Adira figure out the next clue thanks to the help of Jet Reno and Book. Jet Reno used to smuggle rare manuscripts, and Book used his empath powers on the Betazoid clue. The clue turns out to be a library card for a moving repository called the Eternal Gallery and Archive. And thanks to Book, they know where it's currently hiding. It kind of reminds me of Danny the Street from Doom Patrol, if anyone is familiar with that. The library is currently hiding in the Badlands, and they prepare to jump there. Everyone leaves the room except Michael Burnham and Raynor. Michael Burnham says to Raynor, "Today must have been really difficult. Hell, I mutinied rather than giving an inch back to the Klingons." Raynor replies, "A lot of good that did you," and smiles sardonically. Michael Burnham exhales, shakes her head, smiles, and says, "Yeah." Then she tells him he did really well today. Raynor states, "What they did to my planet, though. Never gonna happen again." And Michael Burnham says, "We'll make sure of it." They beam back to the bridge because walking is just too far. And Michael Burnham announces, "Black alert!" The end. Well, if you couldn't tell, I freaking hated this episode. There was so much about this that was just lazy, sloppy writing. I predicted the setup where L'ak was going to die and Moll was going to need that progenitor's tech to bring him back. The fight scenes were boring because it was just a lot of shaky cam. I'm supposed to believe that this tiny little blonde took on all those security officers. She managed to get away. Oh, but it was so convenient that Book found her and stopped her. And now she has gone off with the Breen. I used to watch Star Trek so that I could be intellectually challenged. And I know that's not why everyone watched it. A lot of people enjoyed the space battles. And I'm not going to ding people for that. But there was a nice balance in the past between the two. And now that balance is gone, and the part that I liked has just been stripped away. And it's been replaced with this lazy, overly dramatic writing, accompanied with shaky cam and a bunch of overly dramatic music that's trying to force you to feel something, even though it's not really there in the writing. Like, the story is just completely bereft of any depth. And so predictable. So predictable. So I obviously had a lot of commentary that I included in the recap, so if you're just starting with the review portion, I would recommend going back and listening to the recap, because I do make some comments while I am telling what happened in the story. So since I did that, alright, old man, what have you got?
Even for people who would like starship battle scenes, there wasn't any in this. There weren't any phasers, photon torpedoes, maneuvering around, fleet formation, none of that. So I get what you're saying, and I agree with you that I used to watch Star Trek for mental puzzles of sorts. But even if somebody was just a diehard, I want to watch some starship battles, just a bunch of ships floating around and people, I guess, pretentiously trying to out-connive the others. It wasn't even interesting, even if you get into those con artist type movies where you like to see them conning people. This wasn't done very well.
No.
This was a bad episode. It was boring. At the end there did something that irritated me, but I'll get to that in a moment. But this was just garbage. It's almost pointless to try to go through and pick out all the stupidity that was in this episode, because although Mollie did a pretty decent job in the recap pointing out a lot of the stupidity, She didn't cover all of it because this would be a 3-hour video if she did that.
I would be here all day. So, yeah, if you want to see the rest of the garbage, you're always welcome to go back and watch it yourself. And I know a lot of people do watch it themselves. They just come here because they enjoy the more, I'm just going to say this, the more honest take on the story, because these stories are CW level writing. It's aimed for somebody who is at an emotional development that is that of a teenager. Easily emotionally manipulated with overdramatic scenes, overdramatic music, shaky cam, etc. And it's just not the cerebral Star Trek that I used to know and love.
And throughout the recap, you kept calling her Yum Yum. And that's in reference to, I think that was season 2, when her and Georgiou killed Leland by torturing him in that chamber, and her reaction to Georgiou proposing to do just that was yum yum. And I point that out, and I'm glad you called her that, because much like I predicted a few episodes ago, they're trying to rewrite Star Trek Discovery lore. And I'm not going to call Yum Yum by her proper name, because what they did in season 2 will never be forgotten by me, because that's a horrible thing that they portrayed a heroic character to be doing. The sickbay fight, when you had these security guards there, and Moll was just doing her super karate on them, and then only Dr. Culber, who was defeated eventually, but only he stood there for the longest time fighting with Moll. How? And let's get down to the part that bothered me, and it was in actually the last minute of the episode. I've been saying all season that the Raynor character is going to be a proxy for trying to redeem Michael Burnham. And at the end of the episode, she did bring up that she felt so strongly that she wanted to protect people that she mutinied. And then Raynor said something like, and how did that work out, or something similar to that.
A lot of good that did you.
And Michael Burnham at first, because I rewound after this was done.
Over and over and over again.
Because I parsed through Sonequa Martin Green's acting on this. After he said that, and he gave a little bit of a giggle, when you looked at Michael Burnham's face, for a quick, eighth of a second, she had this look of dread on her face, and I thought for a moment, finally, I'm going to get what I want here. I'm going to get Michael Burnham acknowledging that she made such a horrible mistake that cost millions of lives potentially, and I thought I was going to finally get it. And that eighth of a second turned into her looking down, smiling, and then laughing. The same way that if you last night got drunk and then the next day somebody told you were dancing on the tables and doing all sorts of stupid things, and you're like, oh yeah, man, that wasn't my best hour. That's what she was doing. And Raynor having the similar setup with the Breen that the Klingons were with Michael Burnham. This is trying to rewrite Michael Burnham's history, just like in that Time Bug episode when she met her younger self and they portrayed her as some sort of animal, unreasonable type person. When you go back to season 1, Michael Burnham was annoying, but she wasn't this person running around with all this anger and just not listening to anybody. So this is trying to fix the Michael Burnham character without fixing the Michael Burnham character. Because defenders are now going to say, look, she finally acknowledged what she did, the mutiny, and she gave some sort of sigh at the end, so that's her admitting she did wrong, right?
Well, look at it this way. Raynor replies, a lot of good that did you. And he smiles sardonically. Michael Burnham exhales, shakes her head, smiles, and says, yeah. Now imagine if instead you were reading this and the answer was, yeah, LOL. Because that was essentially what happened here. She laughed out loud. Literally. So when you read it as, yeah, LOL, that's a really disturbing thing. Because this was extremely disturbing. It's like, yeah.
I almost expected her to say, yeah, LOL, and I became captain, and I'm a big hero now because my foster dad got me out of trouble, and look where I am now.
If these writers actually wanted to make Michael Burnham a more likable character at this point, if they wanted to address a lot of the criticism that a lot of us have as far as her horrible past and how it doesn't seem to weigh on her at all, she served 6 months of a life sentence. That was it. So she never really paid for what she did, because not only that, she's a captain now. So are you kidding me? So if they actually wanted to fix this, here's how that conversation should have gone. A lot of good that did you. And what Michael Burnham should have said was, yeah, I only served 6 months of a life sentence, but I live with so much blood on my hands. There is no way I will ever be able to wash this off. And I don't want that for you. That's what she should have said, or some variation of that, in order to let the audience know that she actually understands her actions, that this should weigh heavily on her. People are going to say, well, she only mutinied, she didn't kill anybody. Well, one of those charges was dereliction of duty. And the reality is, she kicked off that war because she disobeyed orders, she landed on that artifact, and she killed the torchbearer. This was because she disobeyed orders. People died because she disobeyed orders. She needs to take responsibility for that. If this was just a regular person on the street, it might have been, like a zillion counts of manslaughter as opposed to, premeditated murder homicide. But it's still, people are dead because of her actions, regardless of how stupid they were. People died. And these writers don't seem to be able to quite grasp that, which is shocking to me. But then I guess it shouldn't be, because up until now, they don't seem capable of taking seriously these things that they write. Everything there is just played for dramatic effect with absolutely zero substance and no depth to them.
Or a joke.
Yeah.
Because her response to Raynor was a joke. It was a joke to her. That's how the actress portrayed the response. Now, what was on the sheet of paper on the script, I have no idea. But the way my reading was, and I rewound this, I'm not exaggerating, at least 6 times, and I paused it when Sonequa Martin Green was giving a response. And there was a brief 1/8 of a second time where her face had an expression where I thought she was going to finally own up to the responsibility. And it passed very quickly.
Yeah, because even if they just went with this same script, all they had to do was play that straight. Raynor could have said a lot of good that did you, and done it with a straight face, and Michael Burnham could have just said, yeah, and then just gone into the next line. No laughing, no smiling. But again, what was in that script? Was this a spin that the actors put on this, or were they directed to behave this way? The intonation used and your body language and whether or not you laugh reveals a lot about your intentions. Because, for instance, you can have a pathological liar telling you a bunch of... One of the biggest tells is that they'll deliver this to you in all earnestness. But then right afterward, they'll get this big smile on their face because they know they just put one over on you. Or at least they think they did. A lot of us, though, can see right through that crap. And we see that big smile on their face. And we know that they're just full of And in this instance, this is one of those deliveries where body language is everything. Her smiling and laughing after she said yeah tells me she doesn't take this seriously.
The interpretation is pretty much what you said, is that she's saying, yeah, LOL, like she got away with it. Why would you play it off with a laugh like that?
I don't know.
It started off for the very, very 1/8 of a second like they were going to play this off as a serious tone to this, and then she just kind of smiled and laughed it off. Yeah.
Yeah, because she said, hell, I mutinied rather than giving an inch back to the Klingons. We actually paused that because... oh my God, she's finally going to do it.
Yep.
She's finally going to take responsibility and address what happened. And then, I could not have been further from the truth there.
This goes right back to last season, because I think sometimes people are tired of me bringing up last season when Book asked her how what he was going to do was different than the Klingons, and she said she had an intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture when she did not. I don't think she takes responsibility for pretty much anything. She's more just upset of the results, not actually of the tactics that she used.
Well, Rayner has an intrinsic understanding of Breen culture, so we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out.
And speaking of Rayner, so earlier before this little revelation with Michael Burnham, they had this meeting where Admiral Vance, Mummy Guy, President Saru's girlfriend, Michael Burnham, and Rayner, they were in this room. The writers put him in that room just to be a punching bag and to be made light of.
Yeah.
And I found that not surprising because that's all they'd done with the Rayner character.
Moll and L'ak should have been locked up separately. I don't know why L'ak wasn't restrained so he couldn't monkey with his bed and kill himself. Personally, I would have made sure that the prisoners were not on site when I was meeting with the Breen. What is wrong with you? Of course, later on, they have they have Rayner doing the exact same thing as Michael Burnham did back at the very beginning of season 1, where, we need to strike first. We gotta blow them up first. But the reality is, you shoot at the Breen, they shoot at you, and it's over, That was one of the dumbest things I've heard. But again, this is all because they're trying to use him as a foil, or as a mirror, actually, of Michael Burnham. They're trying to redeem her through having Rayner go through the same stuff that she did back at the beginning of season 1.
And I don't understand, why can't they allow the Michael Burnham character to finish this character growth? Just let it happen. There are so many of us that will not accept Michael Burnham. When you go out of your way to not have her finish her character arc, it bothers me. How many of us have that friend or family member, and when you wait for an apology from them, what they tell you is, I'm sorry, ... that you didn't like what I said or what I did. So they're not actually sorry for what they did, they're just sorry it upset you.
Or they say something like I told you the last time, it'll never happen again.
I just wish instead of trying to do it through proxy with Rayner, they would just let Michael Burnham finish this arc. I've been waiting, I've been talking about this all season because I saw this coming. As soon as they had Rayner be stripped of his rank or forced to retire, I knew this was going to be Michael Burnham 2.0, but done correctly. And then somehow she was going to ride the coattails of his redemption. He didn't mutiny. He didn't do what Michael Burnham did.
Well, not yet.
And somehow that's supposed to be, see, look, Michael Burnham grew. That's her first officer. What? And then she could have shared that knowledge with him in a way that mattered of, you know what, Rayner? The restraint that you had, I wish I would have practiced that back with the Klingons because you're a better officer than I was. That's what should have happened. And I would have said, you know what? Michael Burnham finally gets it. And there would have been some character growth. But for some reason, Michael Burnham is not allowed to have a single stain on her character. She has to be this pristine, I don't even know what to call the type of character, because it's not an archetype, because if I was going to present what Michael Burnham's done and did, this would be an archetype for a villain, not for a hero.
Or some sort of Greek god mythology kind of thing. As we all know that a lot of them were really nasty pieces of work.
Because I do not understand what they're doing here. Because I'm spending most of my time talking about that Michael Burnham line at the end about the Klingons. And I think most of you, if you've watched the episode before listening to our video, you know I was going to do this because you know how I brought this up many, many, many times. And I could talk about the other stupidity in the episode, but to me that's irrelevant. Up to that point, it was just a stupid Discovery episode like any other stupid Discovery episode. It was the ending part, when they were trying to fix Michael Burnham without fixing Michael Burnham, and all they did was make the problem worse. It's the same thing they did last season with the intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture. This was another example. I'm going to be talking about this memory now for the rest of the season when Michael Burnham does something. Maybe the next episode, they continue with this and Michael Burnham realizes that she did do wrong. She just didn't mutiny against her captain. See, this whole season has been about connections and friendship and loyalty. And that captain wasn't just the captain, Captain Georgiou. That was her surrogate mother figure. And she turned on her surrogate mother figure like that. And her explanation to Georgiou after she did it was, I was trying to protect you. And Georgiou was actually ashamed of her. When you look at a series like The Next Generation, and you look at like the first couple of seasons, and they were still trying to figure out some stuff, before Riker was getting the beard, in season 1 when he had the baby face. Because even Babylon 5, you look at season 1, they didn't quite flesh the characters out all the way yet. But what they're doing with Michael Burnham is, instead of just saying, look, let's just ignore that and hope nobody notices, and let's just build this Michael Burnham contemplative captain, they keep going back. See, some people will come in our comments and question us and say, why can't you let that go? That was in season 1. And the response every single time is, because the writers of the show keep bringing it up. They won't let us forget what she did in season 1. And now we're butting heads on ethics, because what I think Michael Burnham did in season 1 was some of the worst things you could do ever if you were in any sort of military position. And so when they keep bringing it up, I'm trying to forget this, and you keep bringing it up, but what you're doing is you're trying to lie about it. Instead of actually saying what happened accurately, and then trying to write it so it would make some sort of character arc journey about Michael Burnham finally realizes she shouldn't be in the position she's in. She has no right to do that. She should step down like Rayner was forced to step down, and for her and Book to go off and do something and live happily ever after. That's the story I can come up with Michael Burnham. And then Michael Burnham and Book spend the rest of their time trying to help people out the best they can. Maybe do like an A-team where they visit different planets every week and they're trying to help people out. But not with a Starfleet uniform on. She has lost the privilege to do that.
It's funny because I was just thinking about this. If she and Book went out and tried to better the universe by trying to atone for their sins, that's a lot like the plot for Forever Night, where you've got this vampire who becomes a homicide cop because he's trying to make up for all the lives he'd taken. You get more contrition from that cop in that syndicated 90s show than you do from anybody on Star Trek Discovery.
To give Yum Yum credit, when Book was walking around the ship and she said something like, well, you were an almost genocider, why should I trust you? It's like, exactly. Michael Burnham was an almost genocider too, why should you trust her?
Yeah. Yeah.
This series is toast. It cannot be fixed. All we can do is run out the clock and wait for this series to be over. Because I'm just going to say this. Tilly, the one line she had where, my cadets need me.
No, they don't.
Why? What are you teaching them, and where did you get that knowledge from? Because we've watched Tilly's growth from season 1 to season 5. What knowledge? Where did she get it? If it's supposed to be leadership, Tilly doesn't understand leadership. Her interaction with Rayner in episode 3 of this season shows Tilly does not understand the first thing about a hierarchy in the military. She doesn't understand any of that concept of what makes a good leader. So I hope she's not teaching those cadets leadership, because she herself needs to go under somebody and learn what leadership's about. So I just assumed she was teaching some math or physics or something. But then if she's doing that, why would her cadets need her at this particular time? She was almost pretending like she was some mama bear or something, and those were her babies. It was weird, but this whole ship is full of weird, culty people. I've said this pretty much every episode of this season. These are weird people. If I met these people in real life and they had a company, a building where they were doing the same thing, because obviously real life doesn't have starships, I would immediately leave that building and say, these are weird people doing weird stuff, making up reality. And I would say, that's enough of that. I'm going to follow a company that is led by somebody who almost committed a genocide and whose ex-boyfriend almost committed a genocide. I do not understand the writers. If they are writing this thinking they're doing a good job, and this is what they think morality is about, they're putting out good moral characters here, then I would not turn my back on any of these people, because I could imagine they would do some horrible crap and then make excuses for why it was okay. That's a good thing you did, Bart. So,
where did that come from?
Well, that was a Simpsons episode that was actually based off of a Twilight Zone episode.
Yes, the 1960s Twilight Zone.
Right, but the Simpsons take on that was Bart. It was I think it was a Treehouse of Horror episode.
It was.
Where Bart was essentially playing the Bill Mummy character from the Twilight Zone, where this kid had unlimited powers with his mind to do stuff. And so the joke was, Bart was doing this horrible stuff, and then Homer had to keep saying, "That's a good thing you did, boy," because if you made Bart mad, he would do something bad to you.
Yeah. But again, that's going back. That is knowing the origin of a lot of our cultural stories here. And I think that these writers, I don't think they're familiar with that stuff. Like this guy, I looked up this guy, what the hell was his name? M. Raven something or other. And he wrote for things like that Sleepy Hollow series. And
we will turn that off.
Yeah, I didn't watch that. I thought it was awful.
I don't know if I got to the point where I thought it was awful. It was boring. And I said, enough of that, done. We could go through a big list of stuff we've tried, because we're not, well, let me not speak for Mollie. I'm not this old man that won't try new stuff. I got to live in my past. I try almost anything new that comes out. I even tried freaking Velma and She-Hulk.
Oh.
So I do try things, and most of the time, it's garbage.
Yeah.
Like, what they're making now is mostly garbage. And I don't understand. If I was this old man that's just like, well, the old days were better, and I just refuse to watch anything new. Except that's not the case. I very much hope the next thing I try is going to be the next thing that I like.
Yeah.
And I stumbled on The Expanse a few years ago. Well, more than a few, I guess it was, 2015? I think it was December of 2015 when The Expanse aired on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, I saw an ad for it, and I told you, hey, this looks pretty good.
Yeah, and then I watched the trailer for it on YouTube, and it's like, yeah, it does look good. And we watched it, and it was good.
It was very good.
And I'm happy to try new stuff. It's just, it can't be just new. New is not sufficient. Because I've made this comment before, and it's a recommendation to the rest of you, especially the ones that are a little bit confused on, well, how do you gauge if something's good? And my rule of thumb is rewatch it. So when you first watch something, they're going to wow you with eye candy, they're going to wow you with plot twists, and it's going to be hard to distinguish if that's good or not. But then go back and watch it a second or a third time. Because we learned this with Lost from the 2000s. Because back then, I just had faith that something, if it went bad, it was going to take a while to go bad. And so when Lost was stringing me along, I'm like, well, this is going to lead somewhere. Come on, it's going to lead somewhere.
No.
And then it didn't lead anywhere. And then a few years after Lost ended, we both tried to go back and watch Lost. We got like 3 or 4 episodes in and said, this is pointless, and we shut it off.
And it was so disappointing, isn't quite strong enough a word. It was just so disappointing because there was so much potential there to tell an interesting story, but you're watching and you're getting invested in all this stuff. You've seen it before, so you know that the mystery box is empty. None of this stuff actually means anything. You're just watching just meaningless. It may as well be a music video with all this cool stuff going on the screen, but it's never going to be brought back together to mean anything. It's just a momentary eye candy weird thing that's going on, and as soon as it's over, you've got nothing.
It's what I said at the end of Picard. Actually, during Picard Season 3. I said, try rewatching this thing. Wait 6 months and rewatch Picard Season 3. When the joy of seeing most of the TNG crew back together again on the screen together, and the Enterprise D bridge. See, I'm one of you when it comes to that. I also wanted to see that, but the story around it was stupid. Try watching when Riker blamed Picard for killing them all. Try watching when the Penguin cut off her hand, it turned into a face, and then started yelling at her. Watch when a Nebula gave birth to the Titan. Watch when one starship chucks another starship. I could go on and on. Fleet formation. See, that's one of the things in this series, Discovery. When I've made the question of, well, how does this technology work? How does this tricorder work? How do those phasers appear in their hands? And some people say, well, those are implants or brain implants. So wait a minute. I just got done watching Picard Season 3, where the lesson was a ripped-off Battlestar Galactica story, where they said, you know what, you have to be worried about the Borg and technology because they can infiltrate it. So why would you allow them to stick crap in your brain to make a phaser appear? Wouldn't that make you more susceptible if the Borg were still around to take you over without really having to put much effort into taking you over?
Yes.
Like the retina tricorder they had last week. And why would you allow that? Even if technology-wise you said, look, I'm just going to go with the flow. It's the 32nd century. Let's do this. But because of the Borg and going back to Secret Hideout's own crappy continuity, Picard Season 3, that some people think was some fantastic thing, why with fleet formation, why would you do that?
I'm going to go full tinfoil hat here. Because, well, why the hell not at this point? It's almost as if they are trying to convince people that the way the future is going, that you shouldn't be afraid of microchips being implanted in the palm of your hand so you can just scan your hand at the grocery store to buy stuff, or networked everything in your house so that, well, hey, Alexa or Siri, blah, 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 and your whole house is wired to take your commands. And the one thing that they leave out is, well, not only is your whole house wired to take your commands, your whole house is basically spying on you 24/7.
Isn't that what Picard Season 3 was?
Yes.
That's why they needed the Enterprise D. And granted, it was all stolen Battlestar Galactica Ronald D. Moore miniseries.
Yep.
But wasn't that the lesson? No, the Enterprise D wasn't networked up to fleet formation. That's why they couldn't take control of it. I just do not understand. There is such a schizophrenia when it comes to Secret Hideout and what they're trying to push as agenda items. Because I'm still going to ask that stupid phaser that appears in their hand in Discovery, it just materializes like a transporter transports it in there. I see no anything that they trigger to make it happen. And if they've got something implanted in their head, then these people are dirt stupid. Because in this universe, the Borg have repeatedly been a problem in this universe. Why would you volunteer to put crap like that in your head to begin with?
Well, you know, there's no difference between Robo-Picard and real human Picard.
Or Dead Gray in their robot body.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird messaging that's coming from Secret Hideout on a lot of these things. And again, the different shows aren't on the same board as far as the messaging coming from Season 3 of Picard versus the messaging that's coming from Discovery. Also, though, they are agreeing on some things, like, again, Robo-Picard is just as good as real Picard, because, like you just said, you know, apparently Robo-Gray is just as relevant as real Gray.
I do not understand any of the messaging that they're doing in these series. They're not offering any glimpse or any philosophy of where we could be in a positive way. All they're setting up is what if in a dystopian way. Because I'm sorry, but if I lost a family member and then I somehow took their brain, scooped it into a robot body and said good to go, I'm not on board with that.
Well, and it's not even their brain, it's just their brain pattern.
Yeah, well, I'm saying just a cyborg of putting your brain, if you consider your brain to be everything you are, and there's debate on from a holistic point of view if that's actually going to be true, but let's just assume it is, and you put this brain like Cliff from Doom Patrol into a robot body. I would have trouble with that as a cyborg. And then what you're saying here is, yeah, but they're not even doing that. What they're doing is making copies of like neurological pathways in a brain and imprinting those into some sort of computerized thing and saying that's the same as the human brain. How? Like, if I got a problem with somebody's brain being scooped and put into a body, why would I assume a copy of a brain into some sort of, we'll say silicon, because I don't know what substance, isolinear, some sort of isolinear mapping of a human brain? Why would I assume that's the same person?
Personally, I don't believe that is.
They're trying to push some sort of like transhumanism here, and, you know, people going beyond being humans to something else. But what they're doing here is they're not exploring the concept any way useful at all.
Now, the Ascension in Stargate did a better job of that than this.
I guess we should bring it back to this episode, or we'll have a 3-hour video here.
Not again!
So, this episode was crap.
Yeah.
It was full of stupidity. It was full of stupidity that we would have to spend more time than what we've done already talking about. And they yet again at the end tried to not fix the Michael Burnham character, but hand wave and say they did by using Raynor.
I swear, it's like they dangle that in front of us, but then they have her laugh because they're not really serious about it. It's like Charlie Brown in the football.
They ruin the moment. It's almost like they know the criticisms and they're going to set it up at the end, and they're purposely sticking their finger in our eyes to say, yeah, see, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Yep. And I really was like Charlie Brown. I truly believed Lucy was actually going to hold that football this time. But then she just said yeah and laughed instead. These people are unbelievable. This is just unbelievably bad.
So we're going to ask you in the comments, the stuff that we didn't talk about, the stupidity of the rest of the story that we kind of glossed over. Why don't you guys do it in the comments? Put as much stupidity as you can remember from this episode, the ones who have watched it, so that we can get a complete review here, because I don't want to go back and nitpick the stupidity. There was so much, we couldn't spend the time to do it in this video.
And we should leave a lane for other channels to talk about stuff too. I'm not here to hog it all. Obviously, there are a few things that really mean a lot to us, and we focus on
Michael
those.
Burnham's redemption.
Yeah.
I keep waiting. See, you would think I would hate that character, and I would be like, oh man, I hope she dies this week. I'm actually hoping they write her, because I feel bad for the actress. Sonequa Martin Green was given this horrible, horrible, horrible character that she's going to be associated with for the next 20 or 30 years. And I want to give her an out so that there's some redemption at the end. And if the redemption is she ends up dying with that progenitor technology and then elevated to some higher life form, it's going to make the problem worse, not better. Because she keeps getting rewarded for screwing up at every phase of her character development in this series. And I would actually like her fixed. I would like her to say, next step of my character development is acknowledging what I did after 5 years and trying to make up for it. Like you said, in Forever Night, you had that vampire, Nick, who, after hundreds of years of preying on people and killing them, he was trying to make up for that. So he became a cop in Toronto, and he solved mysteries to try to help people.
Homicides in particular.
Yeah. That TV series had cheese in it. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't.
Oh, loads of cheese.
But at least at the heart of it was a better redemption arc than what they're giving Michael Burnham.
Yeah, at least they tried. This, they're not even trying. Yeah, I'm sure other people have things to say about this too. That's why we make these videos, so that we can talk about this. So leave your comments below and we'll have our discussion. Till next week.
Take care.